Thank you guys all for being here. I think today we're really going to talk about the future of education and how you can be a part of it. You know, I mean, 4 years ago, the Thai ecosystem of entrepreneurs didn't really even exist. And just in 4 years' time, it's grown so much. And it's all because of the community and because of the hard work of a few people. So you can have that here, and in 2-3 years' time, you know, we can come back and this will be a thriving ecosystem of entrepreneurs. The one thing that I want to stress is that things have changed a lot, and you can all be a part of this ecosystem if you want to be, and there's nothing to stop you from it. And I'll talk a bit about how you can become an entrepreneur, even if you don't think that you can be an entrepreneur today. And we'll talk about some of the things where you can do that right now, and there's nothing to stop you. So, you know, I'll go through some of that, and I'll share with you some of the videos, and it'll be a fun day. One of the most important things to kind of learn today is that everything is available to you now. We have the internet now, and so all the boundaries have disappeared, and the only boundary between you and your goals is your imagination and your will. So as long as you have a will and you have motivation and you find your passion, you can literally do anything now. I think there's, you know, as Sumit actually wrote, there's a change in the mountain air, and it comes from the stirrings of tech entrepreneurship. You know, Nepal has been hit by earthquakes and, you know, instability in politics, and, you know, the recent blockades, and, you know, we can actually change things around, and this whole entrepreneur and startup scene can be the start of changing this whole country around and changing yourself, right? You start changing the country by changing yourself. And so one of the things is, why is startups and entrepreneurship so important, right? Because actually startups create almost all the jobs now in, well, this is for America, but this is really throughout the world. Startups are actually creating almost all the jobs, and existing large firms and existing firms are actually cutting jobs. So all the new net job creations are all coming from startups. The rest of the world has, I mean, we've gone through the agricultural revolution, you know, I mean, back in the, you know, 200 years ago, everybody, 99% of the people worked in agriculture, right? And then the Industrial Revolution came, and everybody worked in factories. And then the Professional Revolution, where everybody works for big companies and works in an office for a big company, right? Now we have the Digital Revolution. So you're right in the nascent stage of the Digital Revolution. And what is that, right? Why is the Digital Revolution happening? It's because computing power has gone and grown so fast, and we have 3D printing, we have all these new technologies that cut the cost of starting up a new company and putting an idea to reality. It cuts that from $5 million back in 2000 to less than $10,000 to start a company. In fact, it's even less in a country like this because the labor is even less. So as long as you have a great idea and you can find a team of people to help you, and then you learn the right steps to doing a startup, then you're going to succeed. And so it's very, very low barrier to doing a startup now. And so we're going to have all this new technology is widely available on an internet. So, all this 3D printing, Internet of Things, renewable energy, robotics, AI, all these things are openly available to learn on the internet. And all these things are going to spawn a whole new set of careers that we haven't even thought of yet today. Things that we have no idea. But one thing that we do know is that all these require a new set of skills. And a new set of skills are, problem solving, critical thinking, creativity. All these are entrepreneurial mindset skills. So if you can learn how to be an entrepreneur, you can actually do startups, you can be successful in large companies, you can work in the government, you can work in schools. It doesn't matter where you are. You're going to be able to innovate within those organizations. So you don't have to start up your own company and be the CEO, right? That's not necessary. That's really hard, right? If everybody wants to be an entrepreneur and start up your own company and be the CEO, that's going to be a very tall order for everybody. So what we're saying is that everybody is born with an entrepreneurial mindset. And what happens is we go to school and they tell us, okay, you can only be you can be a lawyer, a doctor, a banker, and these are the only things that you can do, and you have to go through school and throughout school just to learn how to do some of these things and take a lot of tests. So we don't have to do any of that, right? Because we can actually learn everything that you want to learn at any time on the internet now. So the traditional path is you basically use your brain as a hard drive, right? So you go through kindergarten, elementary school, high school, and you kind of just remember things from the books, and then you kind of regurgitate them out to take tests. And so by the time you're in college, you've taken enough tests to get some kind of a diploma that says you're really good at test taking. So I mentor a lot of kids that are coming out of college and stuff, and I asked them, what do you want to do? They said, I have no idea, but I'm good at test taking. What do you think I should do? What are you asking me for? I said, you should know what you want to do. But because the traditional path, nobody ever asks you what you want to do. You're just asked to get better grades and to take better tests. And nobody ever asks you what you want to do, why you want to do it, what you're passionate about. And so you just kind of follow that traditional path and you get a desk job and you retire. So the new path is that everything that you want to learn is available right now on the internet. So you can do any learning that you want right now. So how many of you want to go to MIT? How many of you don't think that you can go to MIT? How many of you want to go to Harvard or Stanford? Yeah? You do? Yeah? But how many of you think that that's impossible to do? So you can actually go to Harvard, MIT, Stanford right now. You can actually go online and take any of those courses. There's so many courses available to you right now. You can learn coding, you can learn business, you can learn communications, you can learn marketing, all from the best universities in the world right now. And all those courses are virtually free. So it's all really down to whether you actually want to learn and what you want to learn. So the most important part is actually learning the tools of learning. Okay, so where do I go learn all this? Which edX and YouTube or TED Talks. Any of those things are great platforms to learn. And then finding what you want to learn, find your passion. So once you actually find what you actually want to learn, then it doesn't seem like it's homework anymore, right? Like once you do something that you love doing, it's no longer homework. It's no longer something that you forget right away. So how many of you have taken classes where you hate the class? Like you have no idea why you want to take the class, but you have to take the class because it gets you credits for school, right? Okay, see, everybody. Okay, me included, okay? So think about a class that you've recently taken that you really don't care at all about, right? What happened right after you took the final examination of that class? You totally forget everything that you ever remember about that, right? Your brain is programmed to do that. Otherwise, our brain would explode because there'd be too many things, right? But your brain is programmed to forget anything that you don't want to remember, right? So if you go throughout life and you just learn the things that other people tell you to learn, and you don't actually learn what you want to learn, then guess what? You go through 20 years of learning and you remember nothing at the end of it. So the most important thing is actually finding out what you want to learn and knowing what your passion is. Because once you start to figure that out, then everything that you learn doesn't seem like it's hard work anymore. It's just, it's just fun, right? And once you have fun and you want to learn that, then everything you learn, you remember. And once you find your passion and you go through any of these platforms to learn, and you learn all these things, and you can learn it really quickly. You don't have to go through 10 years of school or 4 years of undergrad or something just to learn that. You can actually learn it in like 6 months or 3 months or 1 month. And then you find your community and you find mentors, right? And once you find that, then you get, you create your own meaningful career. Whether it's starting a business, whether it's working within a big company. But working within a big company, just because you work within the government or a big company, doesn't mean that you have to sit there and just have somebody else tell you what to do. You can be an innovator within a large company. You can be an innovator within the government. You can be an innovator anywhere in your own company, right? It doesn't have to be the fact that you have to start a $1 billion company and be the CEO in order to be an innovator and an entrepreneur, right? You can be an innovator wherever you are. You can make changes and make the world and change the world and make it a better place wherever you are. I created a new word. It's called future hack. And to future hack your life is the art of creating your own path for the future. And what does that mean? Okay, it means finding your passion and knowing why. Finding your purpose, asking yourself, why am I doing this? Does it make me happy? Does it make the world a better place? Or am I just going blindly through life and not even knowing why I'm doing what I'm doing every day? You set a moonshot goal, and I'll explain what a moonshot goal is. And then you reverse engineer your learning path, meaning once you know why you're doing what you're doing, and you know what your moonshot goal is, which is a goal so big that you have no idea how you're going to achieve it, right? But you have that goal. Because if you have moonshot goals, you're going to have to fail. And failure is part of life. And if you don't fail, that means you're not trying hard enough. That means you're just doing the safe things that you know how to do already. And that means you're not trying hard enough, or you're not achieving your full potential. And then once you reach your goal, get ready to repeat that process, because you can actually reach many goals now. It used to be that you'd have one career for your life, and that's it. And that's because there was no internet, and you couldn't learn everything that you can learn now. Now you can learn anything in months, in weeks, in 1 year. You couldn't do that before. So you had to like learn something, a whole process, and took you, 10 years to learn, and then by then you're working and that's it. But now you can learn that really quickly, and you can do 3 things that you love, right? All of us have like, I love cooking, I love technology, I love, education, right? And I love trading and finance. So I love all these things, and I can learn all of these things. So a person is not defined by just one thing, right? You have multiple things that you love to do, and you can learn all of them. And you can actually be really good at all of them because, you have instant education anywhere, anytime with the internet. So what is a moonshot goal? A moonshot goal is, like when Elon Musk said, I'm going to start a space company, right? I mean, that was insanity. You know why? At that time, no individual had ever even thought of starting a space company before, because that was left to the domain of countries and trillions of dollars, right? So he's like, yeah, I'm going to start a space company. I'm going to do it better than the government. Okay, that's a moonshot goal. When America, John F. Kennedy said, I'm going to go, we're going to, as a nation, we're going to send a man to the moon and bring him safely back to Earth within this decade. Well, they had no idea and no technology to do any of that when he announced it. He was basically counting on the human race to figure it out, to invent it all. And they did. When Norgay actually climbed to the peak of Mount Everest, nobody had ever done that before. That was crazy. Who would think to do that? And who could do that? Well, that's what a moonshot goal is, okay? So whenever you start thinking about, okay, what do I love to do, and what is the most that I can achieve? So that's your goal. But what's a moonshot goal? A moonshot goal is like, what's the most that I could never even imagine of achieving? Well, that's your new moonshot goal. Okay, so I'll tell you really quickly about my story, because so I started out in China. I was born in China. I immigrated to the U.S. With very, very little, with nothing really. I immigrated to with my mother and my brother when I was 8 years old, and we had nothing, and we didn't know the language, we didn't have any money, we just kind of landed in America. I started working when I was 9 years old, and I started delivering newspapers. And then I had 2 jobs. My other job was working at a restaurant, and my mom had 4 jobs. So me at 10 years old having 2 jobs wasn't a big deal, because she had 4 jobs. It was just natural, right? But every day, we'd be like, oh my God, why do I have to have, after a while, you're like, why do I have 2 jobs and all my friends are out there having fun? And, every New Year's we'd be working while, all my friends were having great fun New Year parties and everything. So, right around the time of high school, you start to be aware of everything, and you start to ask questions, and you said, okay, why am I in this situation and everybody else is in a better situation? So when I was at the restaurant, I used to talk to the customers there, and I was living in the suburbs of New York, and so I asked them, so how did you guys get to be so successful? What did you guys do? And they said Wall Street, and I said, I have no idea what that means, but whatever that means, I'm going to do it, right? So from the time I was 14 years old, I found my passion, which was in Wall Street and investing. And I found my purpose, and my purpose was to get my family out of this hole and get us to a better place, and that was my purpose. So at the age of 14, I found my passion and my purpose. And so what did I do next? I didn't go to the school and ask my teacher, hey, so can you put together a course for me to, learn about investing and learn about, because that was never going to happen, right? So I basically put together my own curriculum. I watched the financial news every day for about an hour or two. I read the Wall Street Journal, I read books. I even drew charts and stuff. And I just learned it all on my own because I knew where I was going. And that's the most important thing, is once you know where you're going, you can figure out how to get there, right? So at that time, we didn't have the internet. I'm really old, so internet hadn't been invented. No, but we couldn't afford the internet, and we didn't have computers. So I went to the library, I got stuff, and I read it, and I watched TV. So that was my own learning experience that I created for myself. And so if I can create my own learning experience myself without the internet and without a computer, I'm sure you guys can figure out how to create your own learning path with everything that we have today, which is a lot more than what I had. So I started trading stocks. I opened up an account when I was 17 years old, and I started trading. I had saved about $6,000, or my whole family had saved about $6,000, in the, I don't know how many years that we were working. And so I said, hey, I'm learning all this new stuff about trading stocks, and I know how to make us really rich. So let's put our money in an account and let's start trading, right? And so I kind of didn't tell my mom what the risk was, and she had no idea what I was doing. So we kind of just opened an account, and I started trading, and I started making a few $100s. I'm like, wow, this is great. I'm making some money doing this. And then I said, wow, this is cool. I'm making money. Let's make more. Let's make $1 million next week or something, right? Because when you're young, you're totally impatient, right? And so I started trading options. I'm not sure. Options is basically a very, very high risk way of trading stocks. And within less than a month, I lost the whole family fortune trading options. And I was totally devastated. My mom said, you did what? What? She didn't even understand what had happened. And I was totally devastated. And at that point, you can either, I was like, I gotta, I'm either gonna give up and find something else to do, which was gonna just put me back a long way. Or what I did instead was I set a moonshot goal, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna beat this. I'm gonna learn all about it. I'm gonna really learn everything I can about this, and I'm gonna beat this. And then I set a moonshot goal of starting my own investment firm on Wall Street. And I wrote that in my college essay, applying to college. And that was my goal. Now at that time, that was almost an impossible goal, because for a kid with no connections, no money, my father didn't work on Wall Street or anything like that, and who had no formal education in this, it was pretty impossible to do. But I didn't really know. What you don't know is sometimes it's actually better that you don't know the odds, right? Because if you knew the odds, you're like, oh my God, I'm never going to do that. But sometimes it's actually better that you don't know the odds. So basically, I continued learning throughout college, and I got onto Wall Street, and I actually, had started my own hedge fund with a bunch of partners, and we were one of the, and we actually gave back all the money in the global financial crisis, and we started an institutional brokerage with some other partners right in the middle of the global financial crisis. So sometimes when things look the most bleak, right? When things look like, oh my God, nothing can ever go, be worse than this, that's actually the best time to be starting. So we started in the bottom of the global financial crisis, and within 2 years, the market had bounced, and we grew so fast, and we sold the company, and I reached my Moonshot goal. And that was, basically my first Moonshot goal, which took over 20 years to realize. So after that, I said, so what's my next Moonshot goal, right? Like, I've reached my goal. What's my next Moonshot goal? And I was watching TED Talks, which is an amazing, just watch as much as you can. But I was watching a TED Talk by Joy Ito from MIT, and he said, education is what others do to you. Learning is what you do to yourself. And I thought, wow, that's very profound, because that's exactly what happened to me, right? I found learning, and I did it myself, and I want to teach that to as many people as I can. And so that was my next passion, is to teach as many people about creating your own learning path and creating your own future as I can. So that's my next goal. And my next Moonshot goal is to teach 100 million people how to go from zero to entrepreneur, right? And how to be an entrepreneurial thinker, meaning you don't have to start a company. You can be an entrepreneurial thinker, an entrepreneurial mindset in whatever job that you do. And so how do you do this, right? So now I have my second passion and my second Moonshot goal, right? So how do you do this? How do you achieve this? So I had to think back, and I said, okay, now I'm going to have to re-engineer my new path to this goal, right? I mean, I've been in finance for 20 some odd years. How am I going to be the guy to educate 100 million or 1 billion people on having an entrepreneurial mindset? How do I do that? I have no idea. So I had to reverse engineer that. And so I started out this year by going to Davos, the World Economic Forum, met some incredible people. I started looking on the internet for stuff, and I found Singularity University. I mean, you guys can look that up. There's a lot of great videos. There's a book called Bold, B-O-L-D, by Peter Diamandis. There's all kinds of YouTube videos on there. Take a look at that. It's all about exponential technologies, how you can use new technologies in any of your ideas. So if you have a startup idea, make sure you're thinking about how those startup ideas are going to work in the future. Don't think backwards. Don't think now, right? If you're creating a solution for now, by the time you start your company, it's going to be old and outdated. So think about how you're going to use all these exponential technologies like robotics and AI and 3D printing and all these new technologies in whatever idea that you have. And also I went to a program called Hive, which really talked about entrepreneurship, but a social impact entrepreneurship, meaning how do you create a great startup, but also make the world a better place, right? And how do you make things better around you? So not just thinking about, oh, how do I make $100 million, right? How do I make $100 million and make my community a better place, make my country a better place, make the world a better place? What technology, what problems do I have in my own community that I can solve? And if I solve that problem, that's going to better make my whole community better. And so eventually it led me to the MIT Entrepreneurship Bootcamp, which is one of the best programs that I've ever gone to. So I want to explain why this program is so important. And now there was 70 people in the program, and from I think 30 different countries. Okay, and before this program, what was the odds that I was going to get into MIT, that Ashim was going to get into MIT, or the odds of us taking an MIT course with Professor Alit and with Elaine Chen and with the whole faculty of MIT. Basically, education right now is an exclusive program, meaning it's only for the elite, the smartest guys that were able to take the test the best, right? Like they had the best test-taking skills and the smartest guys. And basically the rest of the 99.9% of the world never even applied to those schools because they said, well, I'm not good enough to do that. And so if you didn't apply and you didn't get into MIT, well, you can never learn what they taught at MIT and what they taught at Stanford and Harvard and every other school. And so that's the current kind of, or that was the system, education system before. This program is basically reinventing what the educational system is going to be in the future. Okay, it's reinventing this whole thing. And what this is doing is basically saying, you know what, I'm going to open up the curriculum and I'm going to allow everybody to learn this curriculum, right? So anybody with an internet connection can actually learn what I have to teach at MIT. So you say, well, that's not really smart because you just gave away all your intellectual property. Like, why are you doing that? Now you're letting everybody into MIT. Well, that's not true. Because everybody can learn it online, and you can learn it. Now let's see what you do with it. So instead of just saying, okay, now you have to take a test to see if you can get in. No. Forget that. Here's the new merit system. The new merit system is I teach you everything I know, and you tell me what you can do with it. You show me what you can do with it, right? That's real merit, right? If you can create something huge with what I just taught you, then you deserve to be at MIT. And so it's anybody. So now, instead of just a few people that applied to MIT or, whatever school, it's open to the whole world. It's open to every one of you. And the only criteria is, so what can you do with that knowledge now? Show me. And so if you can do amazing things with that knowledge, now you can come to MIT, and then and MIT now becomes the super accelerator, right? It's like now the smartest people from anywhere, anybody, any age, no discrimination. You just have to be smart and do something with the knowledge that I've given you. And you have to show me what the results of that knowledge is. And if you can show me that, then come on in. And I'll make you, I'll accelerate your program even more. And so that's what the new learning ecosystem is going to be. It's going to be totally inclusive of everybody, and it's going to be totally merit-based. And by merit-based, I mean how many people have you helped, and how many, what have you done with that knowledge? What have you created? Basically, right now, you guys are starting from the bottom. There's a lot of benefits to starting from the bottom, right? You got nothing to lose, right? You can only go one way, up. Okay? You're super motivated because you want to get out of what you want to do, right? You're starting from the bottom. There's a very low cost base here as well, so you can actually leapfrog the technologies, right? So what I mean by that is, like, when you look at technologies, so if I'm in the middle of the farmland in China, in rural China, I get a better cell reception than if I'm in the downtown New York City. You know why? Because they never built the fixed lines. They just went straight through 4G, right? It was more expensive to build the 4G, to build the fixed lines than just going straight to 4G. So that's what you guys can do, right? With all the internet technology, you guys don't have to learn all the old programming languages and stuff. You can go straight to Swift, you can go straight to, you know, all the new programming languages and learn the best thing right now and actually be a super low-cost producer, but of the newest programming languages, right? I mean, that's just one example. So the keys to success is actually finding your passion, creating your own path, being innovative and thinking exponentially and setting that really high moonshot goal that you don't even think that you can ever achieve. You know, connect with the community, because you can't do a startup by yourself, right? You need a whole community to help you. And when you fail, your community is going to pick you up and help you again. Never give up, right? And there's a word called anti-fragile, and that's another book that you can read by Nicholas Taleb. And it tells you the idea that every time you fail, every time there's a disaster, every time you think the world is going to end, you don't give up. You actually come back, not like before, but actually way stronger than before. And so that's this anti-fragile. I want you guys to remember that, because you guys can come back from every mistake that you make much stronger because you've learned that lesson.